Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much, Lara, for having me. Yes, I feel a bit like the minority speaker in a parliament after this poll, but I will do my very best. So you already heard the introduction of our company. I think it's very important to say that we live and love textiles, and the textile industry is, of course, affected by this initiative. If you may turn to the next slide. Thank you. So we have a prominent appearance in the voting booklet of this vote. The textile industry is illustrated as a very long chain industry, so with very long supply chains, and that's a part of the problem. If you look at a t-shirt, for instance, comes from the cotton fields, and it goes about 14,000 kilometers per item. And we have many companies involved. We have the yarn companies, we have the fiber companies, we have the weaving companies, we have probably a dyeing company, we could have an embroidery company, and that's actually the value chain who engages about thousands of subcontractors, each company who is involved. And that's probably also why textiles are called the second most polluting industry. For example, when you have a t-shirt, as I mentioned before, I will take about 2,000 liters of water and 3 kgs of chemicals. And that's why we're quite used to work against environmental pollution, and not only since Rana Plaza in 2013. So for decades, we have been under suspicion of NGOs and the politics. And therefore, we have a DNA of take responsibility for our supply chains, especially in Europe, also for the human rights. And that's why also we share the aim of the initiative. However, the means of the initiative, and that's what I think is the most important part, because you have to read the initiative text, I completely do not share. If you could go to the next slide, please. We anchored the Sustainable Development Goals in the strategy of our company, and I think many of other textile players in Switzerland did as well. But I want to actually share with you my personal sorrows about this initiative. If you could go to the next slide, please. When we talk about due diligence, and sorry for saying that, but Samuel put this as a very easy task, and we know when you have a very long supply chain, it's a very strong task to do, because everyone could tick a box and everyone could say it's like this. No, I think, and it's also my experience, you have to identify the hotspots. So where you really have to put an eye on, be it on human rights, be it on environmental systems, because every country has its own legislation. And I have a very strong self-interest when I look at my clients, such as couture brands or other clients, because they will ban my products if I want to sell them something that could be having a high risk of violation of such standards. And that's why we also foster long-standing relationships with our suppliers. We try to visit them personally, probably not in times of Corona, but we know them. But to really find out what's going on behind the scenes for an SME, I must tell you, this is not really easy. And as a third mean we can apply is actually labels and standards. You might know them, BSCI, Made in Green, etc. So we think it is still already really hard to control our supply chains, unlike Samuel said, but we are really striving to do our best to do so. If you could go to the next slide, please. We strongly believe that the initiative is a naming and blaming, so you can engage lawsuits, and we made good results with sharing our values and caring for those suppliers who are working with us. because this results in a greater transparency and a solution-oriented error culture, not a lawsuit. You could go to the next slide, please. So for our industry, the scope of liability is very, very far. And if you look at the initiative text, and that's what we're voting about, not about good ideas, which we share, then you see that you have to be liable for all, really all your business partners. So upstream for us to the cotton field and downstream to the end user. We will probably be rated as a risk industry. So we really have to be liable for all of our business partners. And this is, as an entrepreneur, can't be the case to be reliable for something that another one does, even though he told you probably he didn't. So when I look at facts at my company, I can tell you that I would be liable for violations of all human rights in countries I work with. And we think that's not possible. If you put a specific focus on human rights, as I told you, some label go to human rights, other label go more to environmental goals. So this is nearly impossible. If you look at the slide down to the right, you see that in China, for instance, there is a ban on trade unions, independently trade unions. There is also no freedom of assembly. And I know many of my Swiss textiles friends who have starter companies, or who have even, or not even, but also have very large suppliers in China. So what happens? They would be liable for actions of the government of China, because we can't reach the standards who are in question. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So this risk for the legal procedures is very high. If I know my suppliers, I would probably also know that they have competitors. And let's put an example that a competitor goes to your supplier and thinks that he saw a child working in the company. And he would come to Switzerland because he thinks this supplier is dependent on the Swiss company or on me. And he could go to Switzerland and engage a lawsuit against us, and we would have to prove that we did the utmost to prevent this situation. And the thing is, it can't even not be true. And that's this very dangerous reversal of the burden of proof. And that's something we don't really know in our legal system, and we should SMEs prevent from being put in court where they should prove something they can never prove. Another thing is that the well-chosen title Konzernverantwortungsinitiative, so initiative for the responsibility of the big groups, is a lie. My example shows that SME as mine are also affected, and I think many more. So the initiative committee talks about 1,500 affected companies. Federal government talks about 80,000 companies who might be affected. So yeah, the truth might be in the middle, but it's still a very high number who are affected. So SMEs are affected by this initiative, no matter what we do. If you would ask me, what do you do when the initiative comes? And in this group, I see a strong majority, hopefully not after my speech. But then I would have to tell you frankly, and that's what a business leader yesterday morning told me in the office. So what you going to do? And I said, yeah, what should we do? And they said, probably move to another country. And this can't be the case because we are since 100 years a Swiss company. We would never do that. But probably, and that's how entrepreneurs react who see a big risk, we have to retreat from some supplying partners because we can't really control them. It's with our span of partners and with the fast changing fashion industry, we try, of course, to visit them and to see what's happening. We try to work with labels, but sometimes the client asks something and you have to move really fast. That's probably a little bit of difference to the metal industry Samuel works on. And what happens if we retreat from a country? there is no work. So actually the damage goes to the weakest. In my opinion, the counter proposal, which of course was built from a political perspective, has a focus on the right measures. It will declass the SMEs from being part of the new legislation, and it would also focus on minerals and on child labor. And I think that's something that the big companies and the initiative committee is aiming on them and calls them the Konzerne, and that would be covered by the counter proposal, and SMEs would be taken out as ours. And I hope that the counter proposal is manageable for us. I don't agree with Samuel's argument that this will be much more bureaucratism, because the due diligence in the responsible business initiative is just the same. And for all those reasons, and when you can please go to the next slide. For my company, please vote no to this damaging initiative, and by result, the counter proposal will come into place. Now, thank you very much, and I'm open for questions later.